Khazarian mob takedown. Hundreds of Saudi arrests, followed by hundreds of U.S. arrests. The great purge of Khazarian mobsters continues as hundreds of arrests of Saudi prince, generals, and politicians now being followed up with 842 so indictments against senior Khazarian gangsters in the U.S., confirmed by Pentagon, CIA, and other sources. Pentagon sources sent the photos below, showing Hillary Clinton and U.S. Senator John H. McCain in custody, wearing orthopedic boots to hide GPS ankle bracelets on their right leg. The fact is that most politicians in the Washington, D.C. have become very rich since joining politics, in ways that cannot be remotely justified by their salaries. This means most have been bribed, and that is why most of them are going to jail. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi has been deliberately acting senile in public recently in order to have a medical excuse to avoid arrest, NSA sources say. The same NSA sources are now saying the mass shooting that took place in Las Vegas on October the 1st was an attempt by mercenaries working for a G4S security company hired by George Bush to create a distraction in order to kill U.S. President Donald Trump and Saudi Crown Prince Mohammed bin Sultan. Trump and Mohammed bin Sultan were meeting in secret access suites in Mandalay Bay Hotel, owned by MSB, to discuss the mass arrest of the perpetrators of the 11 September terror attacks, the sources say. Both Trump and MBS were evacuated safely, and the arrests have now begun in a way that can no longer be denied by the corporate propaganda media, multiple sources confirm. As the arrests were taking place, Trump had a secret meeting in Vietnam with Russian President Vladimir Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping. Here's what a CIA source who had eyes and ears at the meeting had to say. There's a lot more than the sideline meetings and the brief handshakes that the media has portrayed. The three world leaders met off the record. President Jokowi of Indonesia was there as well. Trump was informed that next month, Putin and the Russian Central Bank will officially announce new gold-backed currency. It was backed by Russia, China, and Indonesia along with their gold holdings. Indonesia will use the collateral account's gold to back the new currency. This move will put a lot of pressures on the US dollar in the global Rothschild banking system. It was also agreed by the attendees that it was time to de-escalate the North Korean situation. It is not yet clear how well the Russian gambit will succeed, but there can be no doubt that there is some alternative to the current US petrodollar system is needed. The U.S. corporate government in the Washington, D.C. Special District is definitely bankrupt. This can be seen in the fact that U.S. government debt has ballooned by $640 billion since September 30th. It is probably no coincidence then that the U.S. corporate government is saying that it will get $8 billion from arrested Saudi prince and $250 billion from new sales of products to China. That will bring in $1.05 trillion, almost enough to pay for the $1.205 trillion in new debt accumulated in fiscal 2017. The rest, presumably, they hope to extort from client states like Japan, South Korea, and Qatar. However, these numbers are almost certainly based in large part on wishful thinking. A member of Japanese slave Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's cabinet, for example, contacted the White Dragon Society last week to complain about all the American demands for money that took place when Trump visited Japan last week and said Japan does not have any more money to give. The Japanese government instituted a my number system to give a unique number to each citizen recently that forced out money that was hidden in multiple bank accounts under different names. This managed to whistle out 1 trillion yen or $8.8 billion, which was handed over to Americans when Trump visited, the sources say. This is big money by ordinary people's standard, but by a far cry from what the U.S. corporation needs to carry on as usual. The Saudi Arabians, obeying their Khazarian masters, apparently tried to use war scares against Iran last week in a vain attempt to save the petrodollar by starting apocalyptic World War III delusion still envisioned by Khazarian fanatics. Pentagon sources say the Saudis flew some F-15s to Cyprus in a desperate move that scares no one, since Saudi pilots stuck in the Pakistani and Israeli pilots won't risk being jammed or shot down by Russia. Instead, Saudi Arabia is under pressure to return kidnapped Lebanese Prime Minister Saad Hariri, the sources say. Furthermore, the November 13 quake on the Iran-Iraq border appears to show Iran may already have nukes, the sources say. This may also have been a secret Israeli attack on Iran, Egyptian sources speculate. In any case, the Saudi purge has now taken in former Saudi Arabian ambassador to the U.S. and close Bush family ally Bandar bin Sultan. Bahrain Crown Prince MBS may be stark witnesses that Israel did in 11 September, the Pentagon sources say. Of course, the trail to Israel will then lead to Rothschild hiding in their complex in Switzerland. For now, it is their U.S. corporations that are being shut down. On that front, NSA sources are saying that top Clinton Bush-backed man John Podesta was stopped from fleeing the U.S. by U.S. fighter planes and arrested. The meltdown of Bush-Clinton Kabul is now publicly visible in even the corporate media, in the form of news that Podesta companies have shut it down. The Khazarians and their corporate media slave are still clinging to the illusion that Special Counsel Robert Mueller will eventually have Trump arrested as part of the ongoing Russian election interference investigation. However, Pentagon sources say that even though Mueller was involved in 11 September cover-up, he is still a Marine who takes order from Marine Generals John Kelly and Jim Mattis, as a perfect snitch to take down the Bush-Israel Kabul. Also, if you think President Trump is really in charge, please read the article in the link below, where White House Chief of Staff General John Kelly says he does not read Trump's tweets and that his job is to make sure the president is briefed up on what he's about to do. The Pentagon sources say tests of the U.S. emergency broadcast system have been done so that the citizens can be informed even if the Khazarian-controlled Google and the corporate media continue to lie to them. Hopefully, the list of people to be arrested includes the top management of Google, Facebook, and etc., so that the internet can become a true source of information once again. On a final note, there appears to be something ominous about to take place in China. Last week, the Chinese government announced that foreigners would be allowed to take majority ownership of Chinese financial firms. While on the surface, it looks like a good move. Japan, South Korea, and other Asian countries recall how Khazarian carpetbaggers caused devastation by sweeping up local financial companies in the wake of engineer 1997 Asian financial crisis. China's housing market is now in a bubble that is far worse than Japan's was. If the housing bubble pops as the laws of financial gravity say it must, then we may see Khazarian firms swooping in to grab up bankrupt Chinese lenders at cents on the dollar. This announcement makes one wonder if the NSA was right when they said Chinese President Xi Jinping was a Rothschild agent. We must not forget the Khazarian ruling class has been responsible for tens of thousands of deaths since the end of World War II. Various authorities, including the U.S. military, have been given irrefutable evidence by the Khazarians who are actively planning to kill 90% of the world's population, or 6.3 billion people. We need to stop them permanently this time. This means taking away the main source of their power, their control over the financial system. This means the BIS, the World Bank, the IMF, the European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve Board, the Bank of Japan, and etc. must be taken out of their control. They are not going to just hand over the keys, so at the end of the day, it will require men with guns to do the job. That is why US, Chinese, and Russian military forces are humanity's best hope.